I'm continuing on with my Minecraft characters, and this is Lee, another good friend of Stampy Longnose. And actually I believe his name is L is for Lee with a whole bunch of E's, but we're going to call him Lee, and we're going to get started on this tutorial. We are going to be using a standard rainbow loom in the aligned configuration where the pins are all even with each other. And the bands I'll be using are brown, skin tone, turquoise or teal. We need 2 white for the eyes, and that's pretty much it. You may want a C-clip as well. And I also have a little round black bead for a nose. And I have pre-strung some little blue beads for the eyes. And we're going to start with the attachments. And we'll start with his arms, and for that we're going to be using brown and skin tone. And I'm going to start on the top right peg, and we are going to go down 4 times with 2 brown bands each time. 3, 4, and we're going to follow that with 2 skin tone bands or tan bands, and I'm going to cap that with a single skin tone band wrapped 4 times around the peg. We want to do the same thing for the other arm, and again we're using double bands, and we're going to start at the top on the left, and again we'll go down 4 times with 2 brown bands each time. And again, we want to place 2 skin tone bands, continuing down the left side, which we will cap with a single skin tone band 3 times around the peg. And now we're ready to loop, and we're just going to reach inside our cap band and grabbing the bottom 2 skin tone bands, we're going to loop forward to the peg above, making sure that we're forming our raindrop shapes as we go, and we'll loop to the top. And we're going to do the same thing for the other side, grabbing both of our bands and looping in a raindrop shape as we loop to the peg above. There we go. And I'm going to place these on a holding hook and set these aside. And for his feet, we're going to be using our turquoise or teal bands. And again, we'll be using double bands, and we want to place 2 turquoise bands 2 times going down the right side. And we can cap this with a single turquoise band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And we want to do the same thing on the other side for the other foot. 2 turquoise bands going 2 times down the left side of our loom, or wherever, there's lots of room. And we're going to cap this with a single turquoise band wrapped 3 times around our peg. And we can also loop these, reaching inside our cap band, grabbing the bottom 2 bands, or the only 2 bands, and looping forward in a raindrop shape. And we'll do the same thing for the other foot. There we go. And we're going to place these on our holding hook as well. And I have made a couple of changes to my original design, in that in the original one I've used bands for his eyes, but this time I'm going to use beads. And what we're going to need is a single white band, and we're going to double it. I'm going to tuck the end of my floss through, and I'm calling this floss, but if you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that what it actually is the grass that you line an Easter basket with, and I really truly cannot say enough good things about it. It doesn't fray, it doesn't break, it lasts forever. So that's what I use. I recommend you try it. Once we have our floss threaded through our double looped white band, we want to slide our bead down onto the band, making sure that we catch the end so that we are able to slide our bead. That actually worked. It didn't break, it just slipped out of the elastic. And we can place that on our hook. And we're going to do the same thing again. A single white band and double it. Tuck the end of our floss through. And again, we want to slide our bead down our floss or grass. I use those terms interchangeably, making sure to catch the end so that we can slide our bead down onto the band. You can use bands for your eyes if you prefer, or if you don't happen to have any beads. And all you would do is take whichever color you've chosen for your eyes to be, use that color band, and I happen to have a light blue one here, and you would just double it, wrap it around your hook 3 times, thread it onto a double looped white band like we've done with the bead, and repeat that process for the second eye. And whether you're using beads or bands, we are then going to take a single brown band and we're going to slide both of our eyes down onto that band. And I want to set this on my holding hook. And we can set this aside. So now we're ready to band our loom. And we're going to start at the top, and we'll be using brown bands to start with. And again, everything will be doubled. We're going to start in the center, and we're going to go down from the first peg to the second. We're going to go from the first peg on the left to the first peg in the center, from the first peg in the center to the first peg on the right. Next, we want to continue down the left side, and we are going to put 2 brown bands 2 times going down the left. We want to do the same thing in the center. Again, 2 brown bands. And for the right side, 2 brown bands 2 times going down the right. Now we're going to move on to our skin tone or tan bands. And again, we're using double bands, and we are going to go across from the 3rd to the 4th peg on the left, the 3rd to the 4th peg in the center, and the 3rd to the 4th peg on the right. And I'm just going to straighten my bands out here. I'm just wrapping my hook around the inside of the bands to even them out. And next we want to go back to our brown bands, and we are going to place 2 brown bands 3 times going down the left side. We're going to do the same thing on the right and place 2 brown bands 3 times, continuing down the right side. And 3. And again, I'm just going to straighten these bands by rolling my hook around the inside. And we want to continue down the center with our skin tone bands. And we want to go down the center 3 times with 2 skin tone bands each time. There's 1, 2, and 3. And now we want to move down to his pant, and we're going to be using our turquoise bands. And again, we'll be using double bands. We'll start in the center, and we're going to go down the center 4 times with 2 turquoise bands each time. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This last one I need to even out here. And we're going to move over to the left, and we're going to go all the way down our left side pin with 2 turquoise bands each time. And we want to do the same thing on the right side. So again, we'll take 2 turquoise bands and continue all the way down the right side pin. That will be, I believe, 6 times that we're going down the right side with 2 turquoise bands each time. Three, 4, 5, and 6. We want to close off his pants here in the center, and we're going to take 2 turquoise bands and go from the 3rd peg up from the bottom on the left to the 3rd peg up in the center, and again with 2 turquoise bands from the 3rd peg in the center to the 3rd peg from the bottom on the right. And we also want to move up to his head, and we're going to close off his face, and we're going to use 2 skin tone bands, and they are going to go from the 4th peg on the left to the 4th peg in the center, and the 4th peg in the center to the 4th peg on the right. Before we can add our attachments, I also want to add the, I'm assuming it's straps or buckles from his suspenders or coveralls. But we're going to add those, and we want to place those from the 5th peg down to the 6th peg, 5th peg in the center to the 6th peg on the left, and the 5th peg in the center to the 6th peg on the right. Now we're ready for our attachments, and we'll start with the eyes, and we're going to place one end around the 3rd peg down from the top on the left. We can separate our eyes, and we want to stretch just one band over the 3rd peg in the center, and we'll place the other end around the 3rd peg from the top on the right, and we'll make sure the eyes are pointing up. The arms will be attached to the 6th peg down from the top on the left, and the 6th peg from the top on the right. And we're going to move down to attach his feet, and one is going to go on the last peg down on the bottom on the left, and the other will go on the last peg on the bottom on the right. And I also need to attach his nose. And what I'm going to do, I have a small black bead, and I'm just going to thread it onto a single brown band. I'm not sure if I can do this without putting it on my floss, but I'm going to try. The hole should be big enough to pull this through. There we go. We want to attach his nose to the 4th peg down from the top on the left, and we're going to go up and around the peg in the center and place the other end on the 4th peg from the top on the right. And that's going to attach his nose. And now we're ready for our holding bands. And we're going to place a single brown band around the second pegs going down. We're going to skip where the eyes are and skip where his nose and the cross pegs are. We want to place a single brown band across the fifth pegs from the top. And skipping his arms, we're going to place a turquoise band across the seventh pegs and the eighth pegs and the ninth pegs and the 10th pegs. And now we're ready to loop, and we are going to start at the bottom on the left, and we're going to reach inside our cap band, grabbing the bottom two turquoise, and we're going to loop up 2 times. And then we want to reach in and grab the top 2 turquoise bands and loop over to the center. And we want to do the same thing on the right side, starting at the last peg down. We'll reach inside our attachment, grab the bottom 2 turquoise bands and loop them forward. We'll do that again twice, and then reaching and grabbing the top 2 turquoise bands, we will loop those over to the center. And now we're going to continue looping up the left side, and we're going to go all the way up to where we have attached his arm. So we want to make sure we're staying inside the holding bands and that we're forming our raindrop shapes as we go. When we get to the arm attachment, we want to reach inside and grab the top 2 bands, which are turquoise, and we're going to loop those over to the center. And now we can loop up the right side, starting at the 3rd peg from the bottom. We want to reach in and grab the bottom 2 turquoise bands, and again staying inside our holding bands and forming our raindrop shapes as we loop to the peg above. And we'll stop again at the arm, and we're going to reach in and grab the top 2 turquoise bands, which again will loop over to the center. And now we can loop up the center, and we're going to reach in and grab the bottom 2 bands and loop them forward. And the last ones, 2 skin tone. And before we loop any further, we're going to go back over to the left side, and we want to reach inside our arm attachment, grab the bottom 2 bands and loop them forward. And again, we're going to do that twice. And I think I want to move those bands down actually. So let's back up here a little bit. So what we're going to do, I'm just removing my bands from where I've just looped them, and I'm going to back up the skin tone and both of the turquoise bands. So I want to move those back to the right, and I want to move these back to the left. And now what I want to do, I'm going to remove my holding band, and I'm going to carefully remove my diagonal turquoise bands, and I'm just going to place them over the center peg for now, remembering which order I put them here. And what I want to do, I want to remove my eyes, sorry, that was my nose, and I want to move these bands. So the skin tone bands that we had going across our loom, instead of from the 4th peg on the left to the 4th peg in the center, we want to go from the 5th peg on the left to the 5th peg in the center. And I can straighten out those bands. And I want to do the same thing and put the other 2 from the 5th peg in the center to the 5th peg on the right. And now I want to reattach my nose, and again I'm going to place it on the 4th peg from the top, going up and around the fourth peg in the center and placing the other end on the fourth peg on the right. Now we can replace our holding band, and I'm going to place it across the fourth peg this time where we've attached our nose. So now we can continue looping, and I need to put my turquoise bands back, and I removed my left side ones first, so they're going to go back first, and then I will replace the right ones. And now we can grab the turquoise bands on the left and go over to the center, and the turquoise bands from the right and go to the center, and looping straight up the center with the skin tone bands. And what I want to do here is in the center, but I'm going to grab the top two skin tone bands and loop them over to the right, and hopefully I have the right ones. And you'll know if you do by your raindrop shape. I want to reach in and grab the next two skin tone bands, and they are going to go over to the left. And again, we'll roll my hook around to adjust my raindrop shape. And lastly, I'm going to reach in and grab the last two skin tone bands and loop them straight forward. And now we can continue looping, and I want to reach inside my arm attachment and grab the bottom two. Actually, I'll make sure they're back down on the bottom. I'm going to grab my bottom two brown bands and loop them forward, and we're actually going to loop up to the second peg from the top. So we're just going to make sure that we're grabbing the bottom two bands and forming our raindrop shape as we loop ahead. And next we will have two skin tone bands. And when we get to our last link here, we want to make sure that we stay inside our eye bands and that we're grabbing just our two brown bands. And as I said, we're going to stop at the second peg from the top. We're going to go over and loop up the right side, staying inside our arm attachment and looping just the bottom two brown bands. The same thing as we continue, forming our raindrop shapes as we loop to the peg above. And again, we're going to stop at the second peg. Now we want to loop up the center, and what we want to do, I want to grab my nose before I loop this band forward, and I just want to make sure that my nose is poked through the center of these two bands. And what I like to do sometimes for this, if I'm attaching it like this, I'm going to take a single brown band and double it. And I'm actually going to double it again. So I want to grab a hold of my nose attachment. And I've got it on my hook here. So I'm going to stretch these bands out and try to poke the ball through. There we go. And I can adjust that better once we have it off the loom. And now we can continue up the center. I'm going to reach inside my eye bands and grab the bottom two brown, and again inside the holding band and looping forward. And when I get to the top, I want to reach in, and I'm going to grab the top two brown bands and loop them over to the right, and the next two brown are going over to the left. And now we can finish looping the left side, which is going straight up, and the right side is also going straight up. And now we're ready to remove this from the loom. We need to double check that we have banded everything and pay particular attention to where we've done our diagonals and the cross bands, because those are the places that I particularly, at least, tend to forget. So what we're going to do, we're going to reach inside all of these bands on the top peg at the left, grab a hold of a single brown band, pull it up through the center, and form our slip knot. Give that a gentle tug. We don't want the bands to break. And again, reaching down through the top center peg, grab a hold of a single brown band and form a slip knot. And we're going to do the same thing on the right side, reaching down through the top peg. We'll grab a hold of our brown band, pull it up through the center, and form our slip knot. And I'll give that a gentle tug. And now we're ready to remove this from the loom. And I'm just going to carefully remove his legs. And now I'm just going to use my hook and pry these bands off the pegs. 1, 2, 3. There we go. And he does need some tweaking. So we're going to straighten him out here, stretch him out a little bit. And I want to stretch out his head and make sure both eyes are pointing forward. And again, I can adjust the band that I put around his nose. And I want to angle his arms down more to his sides. So I'm going to place my hook down through the top teardrop, and I'm just going to give those bands a tug to angle his arm down. I can do the same thing on the other side, going straight down through the center of the raindrop and giving a gentle tug, and that will angle his arms down. And I want to straighten out his legs. And normally for my characters I define their feet, but because these are Minecraft characters and they're based on blocks, I'm going to leave his feet as they are. And we just need to attach our slipknot bands. And to do that, we're just going to weave them through in a couple of spots at the back. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab the center band and grab a hold of what is now my left side band and pull it through the center. And then I'm going to weave it through a few bands at the back of his head. And this is where you may wish to use your C-clip to secure these bands. You don't have to. And again, I'm reaching through my center band, grabbing a hold of my right side band, and I'm going to weave it through in a couple of spots. And finally, I want to find the end of my center band. And I'm going to weave it through a couple of bands at the back of his head. And we just want to do it that way to try to keep the rectangle or squareness of his head, because as I mentioned, the Minecraft characters are made out of blocks. And you can attach a mouth if you want. I am not going to. It doesn't look like he has one in the photo that I used to design this guy. But there you have it. This is L is for Lee from Minecraft fame, and a good friend of Stampy Longnose. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to see what you come up with if you make one of these from my tutorial, so please comment below and post your pictures. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I have a lot more Minecraft as well as the rest of my collections to get through. So again, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.